And thank you for joining us this evening for our City Council meeting. We'll go ahead and get started. Wendy, could you please call the roll?
Adamson. Here. Gray.
Here.
Cheetah.
Here.
Lyric.
Here.
Ortega.
Here.
Stevens.
Here.
Black.
Here. Would you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, after which, if you'd please remain standing for the invocation which will be offered by Pastor Scott Sampson, representing Rocky Mountain Ministries.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for this great day that you have given us. We thank you for this wonderful country that we live in. We thank you for Pocatello, our fair city. And Lord, our public servants, I ask you to bless them, to guide them, give wisdom, that this meeting will go well and that your will be done. And Father, we ask this all in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. We'll move to agenda item number 3, is the consent agenda. The following business items may be approved by one motion and a vote. If any one member of the council so desires, any matter listed can be moved to a separate agenda item. A, minutes. Council may wish to waive the oral reading of the minutes and approve the minutes from the following meetings. Clarification and regular city council meetings of April 15, 2021 and May 6, 2021. B, material claims. Council may wish to consider material claims for the month of May 2021. Council, I know Jim has given us the stuff. Any questions for Jim?
Actually.
Yes.
So I'm just curious if you could at some point share some thoughts on our key card situation. It seems like there are entire departments where everybody has one. And I'm just wondering if that's the most efficient, cost-saving way to do things.
I think there are some cases where it is definitely that way, and there are some instances where it's pretty much unavoidable, the need for purchase card. I also believe that based on the report that I'd given to you at the last meeting where I gave you claims, that I think there is a need to reduce the number of purchase cards throughout the city. And to that end, that's where I will be working towards. I can't tell you exactly where that's going to go at this point, but I do hear the council's interest in proceeding.
All right.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yeah, related to that, I'm just wondering if we could also look at the benefits of consolidated purchasing when that makes sense. And then also, I think we have this to some degree in many departments, but many institutions have like a company catalog. I mean, if you're buying a particular piece of equipment or whatever it is, a wrench or whatever, that, these are your choices. It's just not, and I don't know. I think we have something sort of like that in some departments maybe, but not necessarily. I don't know.
I don't know either as it relates to that specifically, right. But that's something that certainly we can examine within them.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you, Jim. C, Human Relations Advisory Committee appointment. Council may wish to confirm the mayor's appointment of Shannon Cobbs Nawatniak to serve as a member of the Human Relations Advisory Committee. Shannon's term will begin June 4, 2021 and will expire November 2, 2022. D, Parks and Recreation Advisory Board reappointment. Council may wish to confirm the mayor's reappointment of Judy Taylor to continue serving as a Parks and Recreation Advisory Board representing Bannock County Historical Society. Fort Hall Oversight Committee. Judy's term will begin June 8, 2021 and will expire June 8, 2023. E, Pocatello Arts Council appointment. Council may wish to confirm the mayor's appointment of Jan Hendricks to serve as a member of the Pocatello Arts Council, replacing Sherry Deansfree Swanson, whose term expired Jan's term will begin June 19, 2021, and expire June 19, 2024. F, Sister City Committee appointment. Council may wish to confirm the mayor's appointment of Wade Olson to serve as a member of the Sister City Committee, replacing Bradley Hall, who resigned. Wade's term will begin June 4, 2021, and will expire October 7, 2021. G, council decision, Western Skies Division 2 final plat. Council may wish to adopt this decision to approve the final plat for Western Skies Division 2 to subdivide 8.16 acres of land into 26 residential lots, subject to conditions. The subdivision will be accessed from extensions of Rustic Road and Mariners Lane. Private drives will provide access to lots 10, 11, 14, and 15 for Block 2 and Block 3. H, council decision, Eagles Landing Division 2 final plat. Council may wish to adopt this decision approving the final plat for Eagles Landing Division 2, which subdivides 4.34 acres of land into 13 residential lots, subject to conditions. The property is located south of Bertie Thompson Drive, east of Hospital Way, and north of Terry Street. The subject lots will have access from proposed roadways of Falcon Ridge and Eagle Court.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Cheatham.
Mr. Mayor, I would move for approval of agenda item number 3, the consent agenda, with the exception of, as you read it, with the exception in the written of the March 11th City Council work session minutes.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Councilmember Cheatham and a second by Adamson. Wendy, could you please call the roll?
Cheatham?
Yes.
Adamson?
Yes.
Gray?
Yes.
Lorick?
Yes.
Ortega?
Yes.
Stevens?
Yes.
Thank you. Agenda item 4 is a calendar review. Council may wish to take this opportunity to inform other council members of upcoming meetings and events that should be called to their attention. On June 7, 8, 9, and 10, starting at 9 a.m., we will have city council budget meetings. On June 10, the work session has been canceled. On June 17, all city council meetings have been canceled. On June 5 through 12, high school rodeo finals at Bannock County Event Center. June 12, 8 a.m., Parks and Recreation, June Joy in the Journey Jog Fun Run. June 12, 7:30 p.m., Gate City Grays home game season opener. June 20, Father's Day at the Zoo. Fathers will receive a 50% discount off their admission when they are accompanied with a paid child. July 3, Independence Day celebration activities and fireworks display at Bannock County Event Center and Portneuf Wellness Complex. All right, we'll move to agenda item 5 is a public hearing, Community Development Block Grant CDBG Program Year 2020 Consolidated Annual Performance Evaluation Report. As required by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, this time has been set aside for the council to consider any comments from the public concerning the program year PY 2020 Community Development Block Grant CDBG Consolidated Annual Performance Report, CAPR. The report was made available for public review from May 19 to June 3, 2021, and has been reviewed by the CDBG Advisory Committee. Following the public hearing, the council may wish to approve the report and authorize submittal, including a summary of any public input to HUD on or before June 30, 2021. I declare the public hearing open. Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening, Honorable Mayor Blatt and members of the City Council. My name is Christine Howe, and I'm the Community Development Block Grant Program Coordinator for the Neighborhood and Community Services Division within the Planning and Development Services Department. This hearing tonight is to allow public comment on the Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report, or CAPR, for the CDBG Program Year 2020 that began on April 1st, 2020 and ended on March 31st, 2021. As an entitlement community, the City of Pocatello receives an annual appropriation from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, and must comply with the program requirements and federal regulations as part of that federal grant award. The CAPR is one such report and is required by HUD to inform both that department and the community as a whole of the activities that took place during the program year. For PY20, the city received an appropriation of $449,849 from HUD. The program funded a number of activities that aligned with the 5-year Consolidated Plan, which guides the annual program years from April 1st, 2017 to March 31st, 2022. These activities included affordable housing, public infrastructure improvements, public facility improvements, and public services. To address the creation and maintenance of affordable housing in the community, the city partnered with NeighborWorks Pocatello, funding service delivery for the creation of one infill development. In addition, the city continued its renewal rehabilitation grant and loan program, assisting 32 homes, 9 of which were included in the lead hazard control grant work. This was over $160,000 that was funded for affordable housing activities. Additionally, 2 sidewalk reconstruction projects were completed in low and moderate income areas as part of the public infrastructure improvements. This included over 2,700 square feet of sidewalk replaced or installed and 4 accessible ramps. Other activities funded included public facility improvement projects for Aid for Friends to provide funding for year 1 of a 5-year funding agreement for their new homeless shelter, Hispanic Youth Foundation for electrical upgrades, CASA for a roof replacement, and New Day Products for the final section of a multi-year roof replacement as well. Family Services Alliance also received a public facility appropriation, which was included in an amendment to the PY20 spending plan as approved by this council in April of 2021. And finally, the CDBG program provided funding for public services, including Aid for Friends for their PRT bus ticket program and St. Vincent de Paul for their social service assistance, which provides rent, utility, and other financial assistance to qualifying residents. The city and its partners leveraged over $660,000 in other funding, such as partner matching funds and in-kind city staff services, along with the nearly $450,000 in federal funding and additional program income of over $140,000. This totals over $1.25 million in funding for low to moderate income residents. The city remains in compliance with general CDBG standards and regulations, meeting spending timeliness, cost reasonableness, and spending parameters for the program administration and public services, which are capped at 20% and 15% of the appropriation, respectively. The draft CAPER was distributed to the CDBG Advisory Committee, and no comments or changes were received to date. The report has been available to the public since May 19th for the submission of written comments, and none have been received to date. Should any comments be received at tonight's hearing, they'll be summarized and included in the CAPER. Staff recommends the council approve the CAPER and authorize its submission to HUD. Thank you for your time, and that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Any questions? Councilwoman Stevens?
Could you just briefly describe the process you use to reach out for public comment?
Sure. So we do a posting, a legal ad in the Idaho State Journal, and we additionally post the report on the city website, and so that's made available to the public. We distribute this to our CDBG Advisory Committee as well, and they're representative of the public, so they can reply with any comment on the programs.
Do you have any plans? I mean, I'm thinking about with the comprehensive plan, some of Brett's plans to actively go out and reach into the community, and I'm wondering whether or not there has been or could be some discussion with your organization, because a lot of people don't get the paper, certainly don't read the legal notices, and a lot of people don't just routinely check the city website to see if there's something on there that they might be interested in.
Yes, definitely. We will be undergoing a consolidated plan, a new consolidated plan, in which case we'll be doing a lot more public outreach to gather the information for the input on that plan. For the particular report here, we didn't do as much. We met the requirements in our citizen participation plan, but can certainly expand that moving forward.
And issue, obviously.
Right.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, definitely.
Christine, thank you. Madam Clerk, have you received any written
No, sir.
comments? Okay, thank you. Okay, then we would look for any testimony supporting the application. Any testimony uncommitted to the application? Any testimony opposed to the application?
Nikki Taysom, General Delivery, Pocatello, Idaho 83201. Under the first article of the Constitution, Congress, and therefore no other form of government, is allowed to appropriate funds for unconstitutional purposes. The fourth and sixth articles of the Constitution guarantee each state in this union a republican form of government with the Constitution as the supreme law of this land and all other laws pursuant thereof. We are also guaranteed in the fourth and fifth amendments that we are to be secure in our persons, properties, papers, and effects, as well as no property can be taken without just compensation. These programs are socialism, and there are people who are working in private sector paying their own way, paying their own employees, paying their own rent, paying their own utilities in competition with those who are using their own tax dollars against them. And that is unconstitutional. It is socialism. We are not a democracy. We're a republic of we the people who earn our own way. And we lift each other up to be free and independent. We don't bog each other down. There are people losing their homes, their small businesses, and their jobs from unconstitutional taxation and these kinds of programs. I don't mean to sound negative, but I myself have lost a lot through this. I often have to trade my work because people can't afford to pay for what I do. And I don't mind that. That's God's law. That's how America used to prosper and lead the world. And to take my money and give it to a private entity to compete against me is an act of sedition, if not treason. And I have known some people who have had to close their doors, who have lost their homes, who have lost their jobs, and either have left or are homeless and have turned to other unhealthy behaviors because of everything crashing around them. And so I do oppose this, and granted, if these people want to do these kinds of services, then they need to pull up their own bootstraps and do it out of their own pocket. And especially it is unconstitutional under the First Amendment to give public funds to any church, because then you are establishing religion, and especially any private property owner, not just nonprofits. When that's just a tax term, it's not a charity. They get paid. That money goes in their pocket. And some of them drive Cadillacs and Jaguars. I walk everywhere. And so I call on you to uphold, obey, and defend the Constitution to the laying down of your very lives as necessary, because that's where we're at right now. I just spent almost 3 months in Bannock County Jail. We're in danger. We're in grave danger. And we have boys and girls laying down their lives in an unconstitutional war for 20 years now, that we can have these freedoms under this law. And it's a sacred law. It's established by God on His just and holy principles as His land of liberty and promise. And I share that humbly and seal it as a record here on earth and in heaven through the power and authority of God I hold, through my covenants and my scout oath and my daughter of the American Revolutionary War heritage, and my scout who earned a Purple Heart so you could be free. Let's lead the way God meant us to and be free, independent families and neighbors under God. Thank you in the name of Jesus. Nothing else for us.
Thank you. Any other opposed to the application? Okay, then, Christine, would you like to rebut anything there?
No, just want to reiterate that this is part of the requirements for HUDs through our CDBG program, and staff does recommend the council approve the reports to be compliant with our submission by June 30th, 2021. Thank you.
Thank you. I declare the public hearing closed. Council decides before you how you wish to proceed. Councilman Bray.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the report and we authorize its submittal, including a summary of any public input, which we just had, to HUD on or before June 30th, 2021.
Second.
We have a motion by Bray and a second by Stevens. Wendy, could you please call the roll?
Bray?
Yes.
Stevens?
Yes.
Adamson?
Yes.
Cheatham?
Yes.
Lurick? Yes. Ortega?
Yes.
Thank you. Agenda item 6, public hearing, planned unit development, Breezy Commons Townhouses. This time has been set aside for the council to hear comments from the public regarding a request by Jonathan Vincent, represented by Rocky Mountain Engineering and Surveying, RMES, for a planned unit development, PUD, to develop 7.39 acres into 56 residential townhomes and common area. Staff finds the proposed compliant with all applicable standards with conditions. I declare the public hearing open. Council, before we get going, I need to just ask if there has been any ex parte communication or contact in regards to this agenda item. Okay. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. My name is Brady Smith with Rocky Mountain Engineering and Surveying, 600 East Oak Street, Pocatello, Idaho, 83201, here tonight representing the applicant on this project. As mentioned, we are looking to propose a 56-unit townhome development just south of the Breezy Point subdivision, just east of Philbin Road, south of Breezy Point Drive. We have spent a fair amount of time leading up to this, meeting with staff. I think in your packet you'll notice we have some kind of markup drawings that kind of show you where we started with this project, and then obviously the current proposed plan in the packet is kind of where we ended up. As you guys are probably well aware, with a lot of the different developments that are coming before you, most recently there's kind of been a shift in the demand for housing, a lot of different types of housing, and there's really not a single family affordable option right now. And so it seems like a lot of apartments, townhouses, and those types of units are kind of becoming, a desire that we're seeing, at least in our business. And so one of the problems with this project, is it is a little bit more dense, obviously, than a traditional subdivision would be, and we recognize that there is a little bit of concern with the neighbors. We did try to get out ahead of that a little bit before we even submitted for our PUD application to kind of try to go door to door. I don't know how successful the owner was with that. I know he was able to make contact with some of the residents, and some he was not able to, but that was also at the recommendation of staff, is to just try to get out in front of this a little bit, because we know that these types of projects are a little bit controversial at times, and so I just wanted to share that with you. So altogether, this is a little bit similar. You may remember a few months ago we came before you with the Trail Creek Townhouses project, where we were asking for each of these units to actually stand on their own as their own lot, and we're using the lot averaging with the acreage that we have, which is the 5.24. I think it's broken down here in the staff report, but we would actually seek that same application here. So that is a waiver that we are requesting. We would be adding a 2-foot easement around each of the building envelopes to provide the HOA with the right to get up right against the buildings and maintain that stuff. That's intended to handle all the eaves and the overhangs that the buildings will have protruding outside of the actual walls. And then the second waiver that we're asking for is a reduction to the setbacks, because obviously with these being, firewall separated, they're not going to have your traditional spacing that you're probably used to seeing. And so that is a second waiver that we're asking for. We've looked at the conditions, and as you'll probably notice in the preliminary stages when we went to planning and zoning, there were 14 conditions, which we were fine with. I know that the developer's very interested and adamant about trying to be as good of a neighbor as he can. Obviously, he realizes that he can't make everyone happy, but he's going to try his best to adhere to those conditions. There were 4 additional conditions that came out of that P&Z recommendation, and so I think that grew to like 18 recommendations or conditions, I guess you would say. The reason I mention that is I know with the letters in the back with the neighbors that have kind of got together and discussed some of their concerns, if you kind of match those up with the conditions that are set forth, we feel like it does address a lot of those concerns. We've since been talking about trying to do some additional things with buffering and helping that separation kind of even improve from what it was currently shown as, with some buffering right behind the Breezy Point subdivision. We have some clustering in our landscaping plan that was kind of more central to the dog park area and the internal stuff. And so we're hoping that we can maybe get creative and take some of those trees and put those a little bit up against the neighborhood portion to help give that some more separation. Lighting was a concern. We're fine with trying to bring a lighting plan to the city to look at as part of our next step if this is approved. I know there's just a lot of concerns that, there was some streets that don't have access during construction. All those things, I've went over with the applicant, and he's willing to do those conditions. So I think with those waivers that we're requesting and the overall project as a whole, we really tried to make it the best we can, and we feel like flipping it the way that we did and pushing most of our buildings kind of away from the subdivision that's there is also intended to try to help that buffering. But we think this is a good addition to the community, and we would ask for your approval tonight. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions, Council, for Brady?
Yeah, I've walked through some of the higher density housing here in the city, and in some of them, the parking for the residents of that is horrific. They'll have a garage, but when you've got a family, you can end up with 4 vehicles, and, the garage is half storage, 1 vehicle maybe in the garage, 2 in the, if you're lucky, 2 in the driveway and 1 on the street, and you do that times 56, and it gets pretty claustrophobic. So I'm wondering what the parking situation looks like within the subdivision itself.
So I believe, I'm just going off my head here, but I think we have around 176 spaces, which is about, I want to say 60 more than what's required. Part of that waiver that we're asking for is there's a reduced setback that we're asking for with some buffering on the east side. If that were to not be approved, we do have a solution for that where we could slide the buildings into some parking that's already there existing, so that would cut that number down a little bit. But we definitely were trying to get a lot of additional parking because we knew that was always a concern with not only the residents, but if they have a visitor or whatever, it's always nice to kind of have extra space. And so we don't just have a minimum of like 5 or 10. I think we're around 50 to 60 spaces additional to what we were.
Right, it was really, I guess, probably more a quality of life question, because in the neighborhoods I've been, there's apparently adequate parking, but when you're there at 6 o'clock, it's just a street of cars, and it's not very, it's not attractive, and it does not create anything vaguely resembling a neighborhood type feel, and I'm just wondering, and then you have to pack the units in with this kind of density in order to make the project pencil out? Is that what is driving the need for the density that you've got?
Well, whenever we go into a project, we look at what's allowed by the ordinance, and we try to stay within that envelope. And so that's what we did here. I think we're just a little bit under the amount of density that we could have by code. And so that's really how we like to look at that in the framework. With respect to your comment about the appearance, I can't really speak to that. I know there's a lot of people that actually, these are obviously popular. I know there's several of these around the town that are stacked in there, and people are buying them up as fast as they come online. So I know there's a demand for it. It may not be for everybody, I realize that, but one of the things that we really tried to focus on is a lot of open space behind, which we're hoping can kind of make up some of the shortfall that maybe the interior where the parking is doesn't necessarily jump out at you. But we did try to focus on a lot of other things inside in that buffering space, with a dog park and a trail around there, a place where maybe the kids, if they were to leave their bikes out, it's kind of back in there, not out getting run over or something like that, and try to give the residents some space to enjoy.
And do you envision these being owner-occupied, or are they going to be purchased by landlords and then?
I think there would probably be a mix of that, if I had to guess. I can't say, but they will be being lots individually. They would be able to be sold to whoever.
Because owner-occupied tends to sometimes result in better maintenance and so forth and so on than landlord-renter situations.
I don't know if you've had a chance to go through the covenants at all that we provided, but I do know that the intention here is that no matter if it's all 56 units owned independently. They all need to, the HOA is actually taking care of the actual property. So the hope would be that it's all maintained and kept up to the same standard, that one unit doesn't fall short versus another, so.
And Jared, I've asked this question before, and I don't know if I can ask it smarter this time. I live in a neighborhood where there are covenants and an HOA, and nobody can even find it. I mean, they resurrected a copy from literally 40 years ago for me that tells me I can't keep horses on my lot. But HOAs they sound great, and it's a great concept, but it appears to me that they basically just kind of dissolve quietly, unless the local inhabitants choose to give them teeth. So how do HOAs, how does that give the people who buy and live in those neighborhoods any real assurances in 15 years and 20 years?
It is all neighborhood or subdivision specific. So, yeah, some HOAs are very active and strong and able to enforce their restrictions, and others are like you experienced. And so the city keeps those covenants and restrictions on file, but we don't enforce them. We're not part of that process at all. But in a situation like this, I can tell you my experience has been they're often much more enforceable because of the layout of the structures and the parking and everything, the way it's really congregated, makes those HOAs much more effective. That's all I can really offer, because there's just so many other things that can factor in.
So to follow that up, if we had some violations that were pretty glaring and an HOA was responsible, would code enforcement then go to the HOA?
Not unless it was a code enforcement violation.
But you understand, I mean, we've got a lot of code.
Oh, you're saying if the HOA, if there was a code enforcement violation, would the code enforcement officer contact the HOA? Possibly. If the violation is a result of the HOA's lack of action or something like that.
So we would have a copy that code enforcement could go to.
But there has to be an HOA board for them.
But I understand that, but still, if you go, theoretically, if you go to an HOA and you've got some litigation you're ready to move on, then everybody that's part of that HOA would probably be notified.
Well, it would come down to whatever the violation is and who the entity responsible for correcting that violation would be, whether it be the specific homeowner or the HOA
So
themselves.
this, for example, this one sounds like it's taking a lot of things into consideration. So if there were a violation of these or some of that, you just go to the HOA.
Absolutely.
And even if it's dissolved, every one of those entities, theoretically, the city could go to an abatement issue. And then the HOA would have to pay for it, and the HOA is made up of all the owners.
Especially if the HOA is established in their warranty deeds.
Okay, any other questions for Brady?
I guess, do we have any evidence that people are buying this type of housing because it's what they want? Or they're buying this type of housing because it's what they can afford with taxes and valuations being what they are? I mean, the desire for these types of units could be driven by, not just I really want to live in a townhouse, or it could be driven by I really want to live in a townhouse.
I can't speak to that independently. I know of the units that I'm aware of that we've been involved in. I do know a couple people that have purchased them for their own use to live there, and they were looking to basically, like myself, get into a low maintenance situation where they can just come home and live. And so I do know that at least 2 of those units of the 20 that I'm thinking of had that desire. I do think there's probably a mix of both. I think affordability does play into it for sure. And maybe that's just a stopgap. Maybe some people are coming in looking at it as an upfront cost, and then if they get on their feet, they could maybe turn it into a rental. I'm sure all those things are probably considered, but I can't speak to every specific person.
Okay, thank you. Then I would ask staff to come forward.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. My name is Carl Anderson, City of Pocatello Planning Department for the record. Before you tonight, you have for consideration a proposed plan unit development to facilitate the Breezy Commons PUD into 56 zero-lot line townhome dwelling units. This application was submitted by Jonathan Vincent and represented by Rocky Mountain Engineering and Surveying. The total land area involved is 7.39 acres and is zoned residential medium-density single-family as well as light industrial to the south. The subject PUD will be followed by a preliminary plat at a later date pending approval of the plan unit development. The common area will provide for additional parking, open space, stormwater retention, a walking path, and a dog park area. Pending approval of the PUD, the preliminary and final plat application are required to be submitted and approved before development may occur. The minimum lot size required for a townhome in the RMS zoning district is 4,000 square feet. The total area incorporated in the PUD that is zoned RMS is 5.24 acres or 228,000 square feet, 254 square feet. The applicant is proposing a total of 56 zero-lot line townhome dwellings. Therefore, a total maximum lot size required for the total proposed townhomes is 224,000 total square feet for the total project. When taking the total lots in the subdivision, including all common area, the minimum lot size proposed is 4,075 square feet. The total parking required for the entire development is 113 units, and the applicant is proposing 161 parking spaces to be held in common. The south 2.15 acres of the project are zoned light industrial, which permits storage units outright, provided all other zoning requirements are met. So the storage units proposed to the south are permitted outright by code, provided that they meet setback, parking, landscaping requirements. The applicant has requested 2 exemptions as part of the PUD application. These requests include a waiver to the requirement that all portions of the building be retained on its individual lot, so setbacks, and a request to waive the minimum setback requirements of the RMS zoning district, specifically a 20-foot rear setback. Both requests are discussed under the staff analysis contained in 1702-140C1 of your packet. All noticing requirements have been met, and 2 written public comments have been received and are included in your packet. Following the public hearing on May 12th, 2021, the Planning and Zoning Commission voted unanimously to recommend approval of the Breezy Commons Plan Unit development with the conditions outlined in the findings of fact. That concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to stand for questions.
Any questions, Council? Councilman Bray?
I need real simple, what are the 2 waivers that were, because I don't know that the planning and zoning has the capability to give waivers.
Sure.
It sounds like it's a variance.
Sure. Yeah, so similar to the townhome PUD that we processed for Trail Creek, well, we did process the waivers as part of the plan unit development application. Specifically, where they're proposing to plat the individual building footprint. You're platting the footprint, meaning that its front and rear setbacks are going to be right up to the property line, rather than having a 20 or 25 if it were a garage setback. So basically, they're platting the footprint of the building. That requires a waiver to the setback requirement. Additionally, the other waiver request is to the setback, which is 20 feet at the rear, and on the eastmost and southmost property lines, they have 10 feet on the east and 14 feet respectively to the south. To mitigate that waiver request on the eastmost, they're proposing to install a landscape buffer, which is outlined by the conditions in the staff report. This was presented to the Planning and Zoning Commission, and if that proposal was not acceptable, staff recommended that the commission require them to meet that 20-foot and remove the parking as the applicant discussed earlier. Additionally, to the south, where there's a 20-foot transitional buffer requirement for the light industrial zoning district where it's adjacent to a residential zone, there ends up being about 34 feet with 20 of it being a transitional buffer. So those are the waiver requests before you.
Okay, so we can grant, somebody can grant waivers, or do we do variances? I'm lost on that. Because it's been granted as waiver.
Yeah, so you can grant, if it's a PUD, you can grant waivers because it's a PUD process, and it's written into the code that we can do so. A variance is different than what this is being proposed, but a PUD, you can grant waivers. And that's part of the purpose of a PUD is to work with the developer to give you more open space and other amenities that can offset some of those waivers that you would grant. So that's part of the purpose of a PUD, is to take a piece of property and that you can develop it in a way that is most beneficial and works.
So it allows planning and zoning
Absolutely.
and the planning program
Yeah.
to work and negotiate. Okay.
It's a more flexible zoning for that purpose. But you're right, typically you hear those things and you think that needs to go through the variance process, but not in this case.
And Councilmember, if I may, we've typically fit that under the first criteria there in the PUD, where it proposes an alternative style of development. And that's kind of where we have worked with the applicant through that process.
I think I've sat through 2 different and it's hard to take all the correspondence and correlate it to what some of the conditions are. Are the storage units standalone, or are they connected to this facility?
When the applicant brought forward the request, they brought forward the storage units as part of the development. I believe their original plan was to have them be tenant occupied. And my understanding, and this may be a better question for the applicant, but if they're unable to fill those storage units with tenants, then they would open it to the public. Just, a little bit of additional information though. They could bring forward the townhomes. It's just on the RMS zone without the storage units attached, and the storage units could be permitted outright by a building permit, provided that they meet all the standards of code. So similarly with the townhomes, if they were designed in such a way that they met all the setbacks and they were able to design their street through there, the code just for the RMS zone district permits 56 townhome dwelling units. They just wouldn't be platted on their own individual footprint. They would each be on their own lot. So it'd be a similar density, actually.
Any other questions for Carl? And you haven't received any more than the 2 comments?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you. Madam Clerk, have we received any in the clerk's office?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Then I would look for any testimony supporting the application.
My name is Crystal Chanda. I'm a resident of Breezy Point subdivision. I'm representing 22 individuals, so I'd request 10 minutes if I may.
We can give,
We can give her 3.
And I have a list of those names for you as well.
Is she supporting?
Are you
Yes, supporting.
Okay.
Okay, we're going to go with 3 right now and see how good you are.
I won't take the full 10, I promise, but I think I'm allowed 10 if I'm representing several people.
Thank you.
I would like to start by thanking the Planning and Zoning and Rocky Mountain. I know they've worked hard to make this the best it can be. We are not against it. When we purchased these single family homes, we imagined more single family homes around us. So we would there's a couple things we think were looked over during Planning and Zoning that we would like to see addressed just to make it better for everybody in the neighborhood. First, we would like to request that trees be required along the north fence line. Although there is a buffer of open space to the new townhomes will be taller, and this will just add extra privacy for the current single-family homes and additional barrier for light overflow. I did provide a view shed for you on the second page. This view shed is Rocky Mountains plans overlaid with a scaled Google image, and I've taken a profile view through there. You can see the single-family home, the distance to their fence, and it's all scaled appropriately. And then the townhomes. The circle on what would be the north side of that townhome is the window, and you can see that gives them a pretty good view of the neighbor's backyard and even into the windows. So the trees would just add the extra barrier there. And if they can't do this the entire length of that north fence, we would request that they do it at least in places that the townhomes are closer than 75 feet. And then second, we would like to address the storage units. We understand that it's zoned light industrial and that the storage units are allowed here, although we are worried about if they're open to general public use, what about safety? We would ask that if they are allowed to be for general public use and as they are zoned for, then they have access within that own use and not access through the residential area. Thank you for your time.
See, you didn't need the 10 minutes. I knew you could do it in less than 3. Any others in support of the application? Okay, any uncommitted to the application? Any opposed to the application?
Nikki Taysom, General Delivery, Pocatello, Idaho 83201. I know that Rocky Mountain does a fantastic job in anything that they attempt. I am opposing this development because, one, we have families that aren't learning how to be families. People are jammed into housing. It's not affordable with the costs of rent and utilities. And a lot of this has to do with putting us under UN, European Union, international law in development and construction trades, energy, and other aspects of our life. And it's literally social communism. We grew up where, at least when I grew up, we had our own garden, we had our own well, we had our own lot of acreage, and we had freedom as children to play. Our children do not have places to play. They have a little park, and they have high-density housing with a lot of vehicles running around. And often you hear the neighbors fighting or the sirens. There's no sense of community, true American community anymore. It's not about being affordable. It's about pushing us into high-density housing, R2 zoning, PUD zoning, which is also laissez-faire development when you mix residential and different variants with commercial and other aspects. It's going to lead to problems, as well as putting us on government utilities, government transportation, skinny walkable streets, everybody online and monitored. That's the agenda here. I've gone to tons of meetings in Pocatello, Chubbuck, Bannock County, and state and federal level, and that is where this is coming from. Even the impact fees are coming from a 1992 UN International Earth Summit Conference. Totally unconstitutional fee that we're putting on our developers. So a lot of the big guys are leaving here. They don't want to play this game anymore. And it's going to crash. And as I mentioned, I just came out of jail where some of these boys and girls have never known home, a life in a home. They've never had a mom and a dad united. They've never had even a home-cooked meal. Some have been in and out of homelessness. They can't function in society, literally. They can't even function as human beings in the jail. And I'm being sincere. It crushed my heart that this is what we've become. And as I mentioned, these guys do a fantastic job. They've about developed this whole entire area. But I have these concerns. And when you jam people together, tensions rise. And that's what I've seen when I've walked everywhere. Eventually, these facilities break down because they've been sold and changed hands so many times, and the homeowners don't do it or the new owners won't do it. I used to manage one piece of property where there were two other townhomes. So there were three in this little U-shaped area. Ours was the only one that was maintained with landscape. The other two, one barely did, the other one not at all. There was garbage everywhere.
Thank you very much.
Let's be Zion in the name of Jesus.
Any others opposed to the application? Okay, then I would ask Brady if he would like to go ahead and rebut any of this stuff.
Just to kind of touch back on what Crystal mentioned about the trees along that north line, I think that's a reasonable request and one that I've talked with the developer about. And like I said, I think we're going to try to get some of our clustering separated out to still maybe keep us a little closer to our tree count, even if it has to go a little above that to provide that buffering. I think he is motivated to do that. So as far as the storage sheds go, we would have two separate access points. One off of Philbin would be a main entrance that would technically be separated from the the subdivision itself currently. And then if they were to come through our project, they could also access it through the more eastern portion. So the only question I don't know the answer to, and maybe that's a question for legal, is if there's any way we can enforce them not coming off of the internal subdivision street. I don't know how that would be enforced, but there would be a secondary option off of Philbin that would not need to go through the subdivision to get to those storage sheds. So I think it's a doable thing. I just don't know how that gets, enforced.
I have a question.
Councilwoman Ortega?
So, because I'm visual and I'm not totally getting this, so is the access to the storage unit, if it's not going to be through the single-family resident part of Breezy, whatever it's called, Breezy Commons, then is it going to be people who rent those storage units that are going to drive through the townhome development to get to it?
They would not have to. I don't know if you have the site plan in your packet, but if you look at the Philbin access, they can enter in there.
What page are we talking about?
It's towards the end.
48 of 69.
48?
Yeah.
They wouldn't have to, but they could.
They could go through there. That's where I was talking about.
Couldn't the developer make it so that they couldn't? I mean, I wouldn't want to live someplace where there's like people driving to get to their storage unit and hauling their trailer and everything else. I mean, it sounds like it's going to be crowdy anyway. I don't know that
I guess first things first, the intent originally and still is the goal. Obviously, we have less storage units than we have townhouse units. So our hope would be that there's enough tenant interest that it's just only serving the tenants. And so in that regard, we shouldn't have any external people coming in and out. It would just be those that live in the facility. Now, if they don't use up all of those, then we could potentially have other outside individuals renting those spaces. But I do believe that if they use the Philbin access and go south, that's the most direct access to those units. I was just mentioning that unless you're out there flagging them off, they could, there's other ways to get in there versus where we hope they go. But we do provide a quick in to those units right off of Philbin currently.
And
with
how
this,
many storage units are there going to be?
I think we have, let me see here. I can't read my own pen, 17. I think around 34.
For 56 units.
Like I said, we don't have as many storage units as we have townhouses, but
How big are they going to be?
What's that?
How big are they going to be?
Right now, I think we have them 10 by 10s, or 10 by 12s, excuse me.
Councilwoman Stevens?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, there's no way you can gate it. I'm assuming these are public, would be considered public roads, the roads that would access, are they public roads or are they?
Depends on which ones you're talking about.
So Breezy Point Drive is public to where it dead ends right now. One thing you'll notice is we did, per our staff coordination, provided a turnaround there in hopes to kind of give it an end cap. If someone kind of goes through there and says, oh, well, I'm not intending to go there, they can quickly get back into the subdivision. But beyond that, it's private.
So could you have a coded gate that only tenants would, so that basically if there's another way for people to get in, essentially you're giving people from the townhouses easy access because they are tenants. However, there's no point for the general public to try to use that route because they can't get through the gate. And if you can't do it on the road, then could you do it at the entrance to the actual location of the units? I mean, because if there's no point in going that way, people will rapidly learn not to go that way.
They'd have to go way out of their way if you have that pulled up.
Right.
They'd have to go clear around and come back in, so I don't know why they wouldn't just go straight in.
I imagine that part of this is kind of like the previous one that we were talking about, up on the
Trail Creek.
Yeah. Part of it is to have some fire emergency vehicle access where they're not backing up and turning
Right.
around and everything
Right.
else. They can go out. So putting a gate is really not a solution for,
If it's coded, it could be, because fire department could have that code.
well, yeah, but they gotta wait for it to open.
Well,
You know, but I'm saying for
15
emergency vehicle, definition of emergency is not to delay it any more than you have to. And so I think the fire, in some places, we put speed bumps just as a deterrent. And that might be something that could go in
Right at the mouth of that,
right at the mouth of the,
that split.
you know, if there were speed bumps, people take convenience over difficulty.
yeah, but a speed bump would slow down an emergency vehicle just as
Well,
much
but
as 15 seconds.
we have crash gates for some things. We don't have things that have to swing out. We have crash gates that they can drive through for an emergency. We put them in several places. Old Hospital is one that I remember when they put the dead end down below the office complex. So I would just recommend that we add 2 more conditions, just to make this simple. The one condition would be the trees. The second condition would be a speed bump. You know, it's kind of meeting halfway. The people's desire, and I don't think it's adding a huge cost to the developer.
You want the speed bumps?
Speed bump right where you come up Breezy
Property or the
Point.
public street?
On the private property where you come up Breezy Point.
So I have a quick question for Brent. Will this come in front of the site plan review?
Yeah, well, so you'll have a preliminary plat, and there will be some site plan review with it as well, that we will make sure that all the conditions of the PUD are met. So we can ensure that it happens.
Yeah, so I just, you know, I don't think a few extra trees and a speed bump when you're putting down pavement is a huge issue.
I think the trees are certainly something that's already anticipated in. I think the speed bump is a fair compromise.
Well, anybody with a little car can work speed bumps.
Okay, any other questions?
I was just going to comment, you know, and maybe the speed bump is the better solution. I'm definitely not in favor of gating for a number of reasons. I mean, safety, snow removal, it complicates everything. But I was also thinking that having the 2 options, I think most people are looking for the easiest, quickest way. So if you do end up renting storage units to people that don't live there, I think they're going to go for the easy way. They're not going to want to go through the development. So I don't really see that there's a concern there, as long as you have the access for the people that live in the development, that they can get in from the inside, but then you have access for people from outside. But I'd be willing to consider a speed bump thing, but not, I don't think gates are a good thing. The trees are great. Glad you're willing to do that. Thank you.
Anything else?
Well, I just have a comment about the speed bump. I just hesitate to have us impose something that we haven't run past the applicant and fully considered. One thing that just came to my mind is, I know it's been raised before, the concern about parking. And if we add a speed bump, that might go in the place where snow would need to be stored in the winter, which then would mean that snow couldn't be stored there because it had a speed bump. That would make it difficult for the snow removal company to, plow there. And so then snow would probably be in a parking space. So that might unintentionally cause problems, maybe. I don't know if it would or if it wouldn't, but I'm not sure. If anybody has thoughts about that. There are just some things I don't know about.
I don't see a speed bump that's going to go back as a suggestion to when they redo this.
Well, it depends on what your motion is. If you're requiring a speed bump, or if you are just suggesting that it might be a good idea, and to evaluate that, it just depends on what your motion.
So we can prove this right the way it is tonight?
Yeah, you can.
Okay, I heard it was going to go back.
Well, it goes to internal staff review, but it won't come back to this body or another body for approval for the PUD. You're approving it at this time.
Okay, so, and I hear you agreeable. I don't think the speed bump, right when you enter off of Rocky Point, in that property, I don't think there's going to be snow stored there because it would constrict the travel.
It might in that corner as I look at the map. I don't know. That
You know,
seems
you
like a
bring up a
logical
good
place
point
to
there.
me where that would be where I would think they would put it.
And one of the requirements in the application is on the pre-plat that we show some snow storage areas.
Right.
And that actually, interestingly enough, is one of the places that we had kind of identified that we would like to put it. That's not to say that a blade operator couldn't kind of be aware of those. And it could probably be done, and maybe it gets a little complicated there. I really don't know. It would certainly be easier to move snow without the bump, but, you know, I think we could probably make it work either way.
Councilman
You know, we've talked about speed bump before with our street department, and they've always been opposed to it because of the damage to the snow removal equipment when they're trying to blade and the problems that those cause for us. So I don't think requiring speed bumps in this thing is going to make a difference in traffic, but it may make a big difference in making those streets safe if they can't get the snow and ice off them.
And that's a good point. If a private contractor is hired by the HOA to plow this and they charge more because of the speed bump, that just compounds the concerns of affordability potentially for the residents that live there.
You want in on the party too?
You bet. The other thing we found about speed bumps is they're attractants to kids on bikes. So,
Attractants?
yeah, they love to jump over them.
Makes sense.
It seems clear that could be
I think Crystal's been looking for a speed bump so she can start doing wheelies over it.
So what's
I
the
know what you're
difference between a speed bump and a dip that carries water? Because we seem to tolerate those very well. One, the blade has to drop and then go back up. One that just goes back up, it goes up and then drops.
Yeah, with the snowplow, your snowplow will typically go over a valley gutter or a dip.
So it doesn't plow in drainage areas with that?
No, not necessarily,
I would be inclined to add the trees as a condition, because I think that that's a very reasonable request.
All right. Do you have anything else for us?
If I had to ask what we would like is the trees and no speed bump, that would be our preference, but I'll leave it at that.
Okay, thank you. I declare the public hearing closed. Council, this item is before you. How do you wish to proceed? Council
Mayor,
President Adamson.
I move that we approve the request with the conditions noted and the addition of a condition to require trees anytime the side of a townhome is less than 75 feet from a single-family home.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Council President Adamson and a second by Cheatham. Wendy, would you please call the roll?
Adamson?
Yes.
Cheatham?
Yes.
Gray?
Yes.
Lurick? Yes. Ortega?
Yes.
Stevens? Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We will move to agenda item number 7 is reconsideration request, South Point Vista. This time has been set aside for council to consider a reconsideration request submitted by Paul and Jane Vitale, appealing a prior recommendation made by the Planning and Zoning Commission to approve the preliminary plat application for the South Point Vista subdivision. I might just add that this is not a public hearing, but we have given Jane an opportunity to speak for 10 minutes. So as you're speaking, that clock right there will start at 7 minutes.
When you have
So
3
that
minutes left.
You'll have 3 minutes left.
Oh, I get it.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Did you want to inquire council whether there's been ex parte communication?
Yes, thank you for that reminder. Council, has there been any ex parte communication with this. I will just start by saying I have been contacted by this. It was very clear that this will be addressed here, that I couldn't talk about any other questions and anything else, and that was honored, and so there was that, and then Councilmember Stevens.
I believe I spoke with Jane twice. It was quite a while ago, so my memory is, but we really talked mostly about process. Who to talk to at the city, what forms were required, that because there was some confusion, appeared to be some confusion in that realm as well.
Okay.
And could I say something about process? It looks like there's been already a hearing about the final plat that I missed, that we missed. Is that true?
No.
No?
No.
Oh, okay.
So what you're looking at, before you start the time, what you're looking at is agenda item 8. If the council denies this request, then we'll consider 8. If they uphold this request, we will not consider 8. So that's what you're looking at, I believe, on that there. So,
Okay,
thank you.
Mayor Blad and council members. If we thought the and my husband Paul and I are appealing this preliminary plat. If we thought that South Point Vistas were truly the way to a better southern vista for the city of Pocatello, we would be out there beating the drum for this subdivision, because above all, my husband and I are interested in the common good for Pocatello. Surely there are currently amazing vistas up that way. In fact, $1 million view, as a county assessor told Paul a few years ago when we were questioning an abrupt rise in property taxes. And the common good is exactly what a wide variety of our citizens use Barton Road for. From biking up the steadily steep winding road for a very challenging workout, for taking a good uphill walk or run, or driving to the top of this main site overlooking our valley for any number of reasons. In fact, I recently learned that folks even use this mountain for training to hike in even more strenuous mountain areas in our incredible state. Personally, we know about the chance to watch the 4th of July displays up that way, not only Pocatello's, but the surrounding communities as far away as American Falls or Lava Hot Springs. And it has been surprising recently to notice just how many groups of people may be up that way at any one time, simply to gather and to walk around exploring various natural beauties. It is even named for a Chinese man who once mined up there, and our children were warned not to go into those mines when we took up residence nearly 49 years ago in our Boise Cascade house. We are indeed talking about a road used for a wide range of issues, not the least of which is scenic viewing. Indeed, we have a slice up Barton Road of what defines our overall wilderness state, and it is and has been providing for the common good for our town in various ways for over a century. Up that way, over the years since we moved in, more and more homesteads have sprung up in line with the original farm where Wildlife Estates is currently located, as well as the horse farm still at the intersection of American Road. Now there are even llamas, chickens, and goats in addition to wintering range for deer. We've spotted moose, coyotes, foxes, and badgers, just to name some of the wildlife that wanders in and out of our quiet rural setting. There is even a sagebrush study area for Idaho State University biology students, which actually burned last summer but has since been replanted. Pocatello may be in need of more housing, but Paul and I were so thoroughly dismayed by the overlooking of good reasons to modify the preliminary plat presented at the public hearing on March 24th that we were willing to pay the cost of this appeal. And we do not speak for only ourselves tonight in regard to this proposed subdivision. Besides some who have lived up this way for a very long time, we have been quite surprised by how some folks feel who have lived in the 12-year-old wildlife estates feel about this proposed attached subdivision. Not only are some of them concerned for the increase in traffic through their streets, but there is no mention of a play area to replace the much-utilized path around the edges of the current open space. So aside from the loss of the intrinsic natural beauty that our whole town now can appreciate and participate in, we believe that there may be major costs to the city, which surely have been overlooked. The proposal for this attached subdivision, according to the preliminary plat, will come close to doubling the number of residences on the entire hill, even as far as nearly 2 miles above American Road. And most of the 68 lots will be above that last road off the hill. For those of you who have traveled up this way, you know how American Road is, up and down, narrow, and often potholed. Sometimes cars even pull aside to allow another car to pass. Aside from that major concern of basic safety, especially in a time of emergency like last summer when there were 3 fires on this very hill, the structure of Barton Road itself is a big issue. Barton Road's natural design, which is necessary for traversing up the mountain, makes for blind curves. The first one is currently at Wildlife Way for those driving from the South Park area, and the second serious one is at the entrance into the Idaho Fish and Game offices. Some have talked about where there may be a road into the current subdivision, but at least the continuation of DeArtigan through the proposed subdivision and where it reconnects with Barton. There is a near drop-off on the north side of Barton Road at that point as well. And we at 1969 Barton Road already have to be careful when pulling out of our driveway, as do some of our neighbors. Currently, the roadbed itself is in need of a lot of repair, both up to the wildlife estates, especially at the inside curve above the police academy, as well as to where the last road off of the subdivision is drafted to rejoin Barton Road. The road along the north side of the proposed development is even more problematic, considering its current state augmented by this severe blind curve. Surely the restructuring of the road designed purposefully to accommodate the natural steepness of the road land without washouts, etc., would require a lot of city funds to change. And if one takes into account the total number of additional vehicles, probably at least 2 per household, 136, as well as all of the additional delivery, repair, city trucks, etc., we think that this project requires a lot more study. For one, there is already a serious need for a bike walkway up from Alvin Ricken Drive in order to make it safe for children as well as for older folk who enjoy this type of recreation. Currently, there are often cars parked on both sides of Barton Road itself at the side of the police academy, and no space even for a continuous bike or walkway as it is structured now. But the real dilemma may be the mandate by the Idaho Fish and Game Department of having the number of homes proposed in a development if it is deer winter range. This is Idaho Code 36103A, for your information. And there is a sizable herd who move through the area in the winter via a corridor approximately through the middle of these 44.74 acres designated for 68 lots. Consequently, we believe that there's been an attempt to deal with this by designating as green space the 13.15 acres in the gully. But this is definitely a misnomer because these acres are not suited for building, nor are they green. The reason that this is that the soil is cryptogamic, which is a live soil formed from algae, and it will hold everything in place as long as you don't walk on it. And when you do, then it turns to dust. So we could have a dust bowl up when our strong winds come there. It is very fragile. ground, in other words, and not green space. In summary, we feel that this is a gentrification of a basically rural residential area where Native folks of our current community would be unable to afford to buy a home if they wished. And all of our community who do enjoy the intrinsic beauty of this historic hill would be deprived of a feast of the soul. Unless there were a visionary plan by our developer for limitations on house size, a great reduction in the number of lots, providing a transition from the first subdivision to the long-established community, making an allowance for a general walkway through the acres that are situated on the flat, as well as addressing light pollution, because this is one of the best places to view the stars, and many folks do come up that way. We don't even have yard lights. One of the strong suits about Pocatello is our relatively uncluttered hills. The views of our beautiful valley are trails. If we build over all of our assets, the visual serenity of open space will be gone and we will look like the Wasatch Front.
Thank you, Jane. I knew that you were almost finished, or I would have stopped her.
I have one more paragraph, but that's okay.
Thank you very much. Council, if you have any questions for Paul or Jane, that would be fantastic. If you have any questions for them. Okay.
So I guess you've said a lot, but if I were to look at what your three major objections are, what would you say they are? This development.
I'd say density, housing density.
Okay.
Problems with the road and
Deer.
and the wildlife, providing for the wildlife. Because the deer do come through there in pretty strong numbers. Up until probably 3 weeks ago, we've had 15 or 20 deer coming through. And this, that's winter range, and this is late spring.
Sure.
Councilwoman Lurk?
Hi. I just wanted to ask you about the road issues, road and traffic, and you mentioned a safe place for bikes and everything. So obviously, and I think you said this, that some of those issues, those are already currently problems, right? To some extent. So I was wondering how much your sense of that this is going to add to that or create new problems, and how much of it is something that really at some point we need to address anyway. Am I making sense?
Yeah, it was during the preliminary plat, though, when these things were just glossed over, that really upset, or, it just seemed strange. Like the road bed itself and the curves. The curves, especially getting up to our house, are very tricky. And then the drop-off on the other side of the road. Plus all these I think it's safety issue. Like some of the people that were up the hill weren't even allowed to come off during the fire, one fire. Mm-hmm. And they had to just wait up there. How are these people going to, and some of them are way up there, how are they going to get off the hill if there is some disaster? And the fact that most of these new homes are above the last road off as well. They're just opposite,
that's a problem, is if there is, if we have continued fires, and obviously we will, that the exit off is just, it's impossible for a lot of people. So if you have a fire that starts, all the people above are going to have to go up to Chinese Peak to avoid the fire, if it doesn't go up there.
And your sense is that problem is going to be exacerbated?
Yeah, I think so, because if you have a ton of people down below, it's it's going to prevent people from above coming down.
It could almost be like when you're in a movie theater and someone says fire and everybody tries to get out. Especially, I would think if it was a serious fire, people would probably want to take all their vehicles. I don't know what they would do, but it could be there because there simply isn't any way off.
And I guess I have a follow-up question, but I don't know if it's really for you or more for staff, or if this was brought up at planning and zoning. Some of these same concerns were brought up from in other correspondence that we received, and my question is really more about fire safety. But in our process of approving the preliminary plat, and Roger, you mentioned that discussion we had about the Trail Creek development, and a lot of the concerns were about fire and ways in and out and everything. What was the discussion for this development from our fire, or the assessment from our fire department? Where, Brent, do you know at all? Or Merrill?
Merrill can answer those.
We've got Matt and Merrill both. Merrill's coming up to the microphone now, so.
Merrill Quell, the Public Works Engineer for the City of Pocatello. To answer some of the questions, we've done quite a bit of looking into the road system that's up there. For instance, American Road, yes, it's an old trail, is what it was, come off the old Stock Trail, which is now Stockman Road, and coming up through there years and years ago. That is not the main access or anything. It can be used for secondary access if needs be. Alvin Ricken and Barton Road are the two major roads there. As far as traffic counts and that, I did some analysis on the traffic counts, and we went through all of that in pretty good detail at the public hearing with the planning and zoning at that time. For instance, the weekly, daily trip counts, what they were calculated from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. would be 55 peak hour trips, and from 4 to 6 p.m. was 73 peak hour trips. If you were doing it on Saturday and picking the time, there would be 69 trips, and on Sundays there'd be 63 trips that would be added. So we're adding one car per minute essentially on this road. There are some curves. We know of one blind spot there at Alvin Ricken, Wildlife Way, and Barton. To fix that is going to entail working with ITD. We've made mention of that sight distance issue going under the interstate on multiple occasions with ITD, and they said that they would probably address that when they are looking right now at widening possibly 3 lanes, and through their study that they're working on right now was the last I'd heard. As far as the fire goes, fire was okay with everything. They wanted the entrances the way they were set up with the 3 onto Barton Road, which in turn would have alleviated possibly the people being able to get off of the road now, because right then where the fire was at American Road and couldn't get through, if they're able to get down to one of the upper roads once it's built out, then they can go down around the subdivision that is there and get back onto Barton Road and out and around, where typically they cannot do that right now. So fire has looked at that. We've went through the fire hydrant placement, everything that needs to be there for the water and the utilities and the access, and they have deemed it meeting the criteria that they review on.
We have a follow-up here.
Was Fish and Game contacted as part of this study as well?
Yes, they were.
And what was their
It's a wildlife, the winter range is what it is, and what that criteria is meaning the way they build that out, the criteria, and then the density. And the density meets the Fish and Game criteria that they've put in for the deer winter range.
So Fish and Game's okay with what's planned?
Yes.
Are you sure? I mean, are they counting?
Yeah, they are. Matt could address more of that, and we've got a response from Fish.
Thank you, Mayor.
Mayor and council members, Matthew Lewis, senior planner with the city of Pocatello. So yes, Fish and Game was informed. They did provide comment. Fish and Game's comments generally have been that they don't have concerns with development within the deer winter range. What they have concerns with are things like what type of fencing there is. For instance, they don't want like chain link where, you know, a deer can get caught up in it. They have concerns with the type of vegetation that they have. They don't want them planting, you know, roses and stuff like that where the deer are attracted and what have you. In the response, and I believe that should be in your packets, that basically that was the, you know, the gist of it. We also had another one, a recent one, that was in the deer winter range where the response was pretty much the same. So that addresses that as far as Fish and Game's response back.
So that might be what Fish and Game recommends, but how is that enforced?
So,
Who's going to be the rose police?
yeah, so Councilwoman, if you look at, there's a condition that was placed on, sorry, I got to put on one pair of my glasses here.
Sorry.
So if you look at condition number 5, it includes the Idaho Department of Fish and Game's requests regarding fencing, open space and movement corridors for wildlife, landscaping, and to make property owners aware of the wildlife preservation requirements in the CC&Rs.
Right, but I
And-
guess, sorry.
Yeah, other than that, I don't, you know.
I mean, because I saw that, but it said request, I think, and so my question is, you know, once it's private property, I mean, you know, who's going to tell me that I can't put a 4-foot chain link fence and plant roses and entice the deer to hop over and break a leg? I mean, you know.
Well, yeah, because it is an actual condition that's recommended by the commission. So when they submit their CC&Rs, that will be reviewed by our legal and make sure that that is part of that. As you know, the CC&Rs are only, because the city really doesn't get involved with it, we don't enforce them. So they're only as good as the homeowners, right? And as you said, there are some that are that have been together for a long time. There's other ones that over 10, 15 years have fallen apart, and so forth. So I think that in this case, the best solution is to exactly what Fish and Game requested, was to put them in their CC&Rs and have the homeowners, enforce that.
It says it's pursuant to municipal code, so it's not just that they're requesting. I mean, it is.
Right, but we don't enforce it.
Required.
But don't we have a mechanism by when they have to get a building permit for their fence, that we can only approve certain type of fencing?
Right.
Yeah, we can certainly do that. The only problem, so that we put that on our radar. So you're right, Councilman. They do need to get a fence permit. If it's only wooden fence, then we can review that. It's just getting that on the radar as far as 10 years from now. You know, we're all gone or whatever, and somebody comes in with a chain link fence, and we're going. And I think the homeowners in that subdivision are going to enforce that.
So part of it is just like other things. We can't enforce everything, but we can, when our attention is called to something, like somebody puts a fence up that they didn't get a permit for or something like that, or we can pay attention to it then.
Yeah, and I think if somebody puts up a chain link fence and you have, 50 fences that are in a neighborhood that are all wood, and that's going to be kind of a red flag,
Right, but there's nothing anybody can do about it. I mean, the neighbors can get pissed off.
We can make them tear it down if they didn't get a permit.
There is something we can do.
But to me, it seems like the best solution would be then to put something in that in this subdivision going forward, whether you're there or you're there in your department, that only specific types of fencing can be permitted. It's in.
That'll be in their CCRs.
Yeah, Mayor and Council, I'd like to address kind of this, and what we're talking about is that it would be put in the CCNRs. The city, you can put that in there, but again, it's a Fish and Game's request and what they do through their guidelines and rules. We also don't govern what type of fence that can be put in the city, if the CCNRs say that. Right now, that property owner, if he came in and got a fence permit, he could put a 6-foot chain link fence around his entire property today. I mean, we as an entity aren't governing what type of fence. We do barbed wire and so forth that's that way, but a chain link fence. So it's a recommendation. If they put it in their CCNRs, it would be the homeowner's responsibility to take care of it, not for the city staff, again, to have one more thing to try to check off on a certain little area that our basic codes would allow anyway. So it would be their CCNRs and the homeowners that would have to enforce that.
It's kind of meaningless then, really, isn't it?
Right.
Meryl? I mean, it doesn't matter.
That's how the homeowners want to do it.
I see chain link
Chris,
fences.
we're going to go ahead and pull it back here. Thank you. Chris?
Yeah, so basically, Fish and Game has said bottom line, they're not worried about that winter range period at the end. Because if they were really worried, then presumably they wouldn't have said, yeah, it's fine, with a recommendation that we realize doesn't have any enforceability. So the bottom line for Fish and Game is that they're okay with that. Is that a fair, Merrill, is that a fair, summary of?
Yeah, that's the recommendations and so forth, because again, the Fish and Game has their rules, and this is private property. This is private property rights and so forth, and that's their request and their guidelines that they put out there. But again, they don't go out and enforce that.
But they're not saying that this is any kind of wildlife sensitive area that, they would say that.
It's private, it's still private property and not in their control.
Right.
Rick?
Well, I think we have to think back to what we've heard from Fish and Game over the last couple of years when we've talked about this wildlife feeding ordinance. Once it's in the city limits, it's out of Fish and Game's control.
Right.
It's up to us what we want to do about this. And they can make all the requests and recommendations they want. That is used to be a dominant migration area and winter feeding area. But as the city has moved into it and that side's burned off, it's a lot less than what it used to be. And that's going to continue as the city grows, whether we like it or not. It's not going to be what it was. And they don't have control. Once it's inside the city limits, it's up to the city, not Fish and Game.
Right.
And you have the feeding ordinance, and that feeding ordinance, if you're planting that vegetation and stuff like that, then piling your stuff up to get the deer there to feed them and stuff, that's where the city will step in.
Well, and part of that, Brian, is what Merrill talked about is there's a specific recommendation from Fish and Game about what you should plant in wildlife corridors. And they've got a brochure that lists all kinds of things that deer will probably be less susceptible to eat and will harm them less. And there's a list of things that you should avoid because you're guaranteed you're going to draw them into your property. And that's, Fish and Game has done that, but it's up to the property owner.
Sure. Linda?
And, I agree with what you're saying, and it is up to the property owner. I think where the part that we can do, I mean, as far as trying to make that happen, is the conditions that we put in the approval. And you mentioned number 5, but also 6 and 7 refer to things about, I mean, there's vegetation, there's fire regulations, there's fencing. Those things are in here as far as the conditions that we're making sure that the developer and then later it'll be the homeowners, but that they have to follow. So I guess that's where we have some control and say, is the way that I look at this.
Aren't they, I mean, they're in there, but they're not enforceable.
So we're talking about something we can't enforce.
Right.
But aren't, let me ask you a question then.
You can say that about anything.
They talk about this vegetation plan. That applies to the developer initially, correct? It doesn't apply down the road 15 years to a potential landowner, does it?
That is correct. It's a revegetation plan for after they've disturbed all the area that we require. So, yes.
Okay. All right, council.
Do we get to speak at all about some of the misinformation I heard?
This is really truly a discussion between the council and stuff like that.
And we're finished?
Well,
What if we for example, we never had here.
I'm not here to argue by any means, but we've given you the 10 minutes to be able to present a case. We have, staff has answered the questions to council. Council has had a discussion back and forth. And so really, truly, this is a council thing at this point.
That's the way it is.
Chris?
Yeah, this is for Jared. And so, we have ordinances. This is in the city, so our ordinances govern, our current ordinances, as I understand it, govern what developers can do. And so once they meet those criteria, what I'm searching for is based on what, like, it appears to me that there has to be a reason not, to say to someone who has followed what the city has said, whether we agree with it or not, an ordinance is a law. So if I've complied with the law, then it appears to me for somebody to tell me that the law is going to now be different, that I have to have a reason. And I'm not hearing Fish and Game say this is a protected environmental area that, we recommend not be disturbed. I mean, there are those kinds of
spotted owls
areas, right? So I'm thinking, okay, so I can't say, no, this isn't acceptable based on anything coming from an environmental group or Fish and Game or anything. I'm not hearing that there's that the developer has done something that is essentially illegal based on our ordinances. So I'm unclear what it is that would allow me, no matter how much I wanted to arbitrarily say, developer, you can't do this. Do you understand what I'm asking? Like, don't I have to have a reason?
Yeah, I would strongly encourage you, if you're going to say that you have a very articulated reason, because what happens in any land use decision that you make as a council is if you stop development because of an interpretation you made, they have a right to have that interpretation analyzed under a takings analysis. And that's a very specific and arduous process to explain why what we did was legal. And if you don't have clear and articulated reasons for doing it, then that takings analysis could end up being deemed by the court to be a takings, and therefore they go ahead and do it anyway. So yes, in order to deny these, especially when you have staff reports and approvals at other levels, again, you have that discretion. That's why you were voted into office. But you should only do so with very clear and stated reasons. And that's why we do written council decisions after the fact, and those council decisions are subject, even when they're approved, they're subject to a takings analysis that the landowner or any impacted property owner can request, and we have gone through that process in the past. We've prevailed because our council decisions are clearly articulated as to why the decision that was made was made. I hope that answers your question.
No, it does, and I'm sorry I was so inarticulate about it, but I'm just struggling for, on what basis can I sensibly function? And so, I mean, part of what concerns me is if we have ordinances that have been followed, again, whether we like them or not, whether they're what we want them to be in the future, but right now they're on the books. If we set precedent around land or anything else, that an ordinance is an ordinance only until we decide that in this, in situation X, it's not an ordinance, then that seems as though we're heading in a really unfortunate direction. And that's my personal struggle is, as I say, whether I agree with it or not, I guess I'm not an advocate of arbitrarily creating, variances on laws.
Roger? I think we've gone to our staff, and when I asked for 3 things to be addressed, and then I asked staff to respond, or other council members did. Density's not an issue. It's allowed by ordinance. The traffic study that was done really differs from the observation they did, and they have counts to show that. They've done counts there that show the difference. And then the wildlife issue, Fish and Game has signed off on it with some recommendations, but they're not saying that it's going to make or break this herd by going in there.
Fire's okay with it.
And fire's okay with it. So we've had answers to the primary issues that were raised. Now, you might not like our answers, but they're answers that came from professional staff who looked into this. You didn't bring us any professional staff observations and data. So we're going to the data, and that's what the data shows.
And it seems to me that in a takings situation, that with that kind of information, my gut instinct is that we would end up with that subdivision being there anyway, and the city would spend a ton of money going through the process of whatever is involved in the takings. And
depending where we were.
Right, and so, I mean, so for me, it's like if we're gonna end up there anyway.
Well, there's no grounds, there's
Right,
no
I mean,
grounds.
what can we cite?
We don't
to
have
say?
grounds, unfortunately. I mean, I don't have to like it, but I have to understand that, and I understand, you've lived there for 49 years, you like what it's like. I totally get that, and I would probably be doing the same thing you're doing now. But unfortunately for us, we have to look at it, do we have grounds and we don't.
Yes.
According to fire, we don't. No, I'm sorry. According to fire, we don't. So the fire department isn't concerned, Fish and Game isn't concerned, and the density meets the city code. So that's what I have to make my decision based on. So I'm really sorry. You're not gonna like my vote, but I have to make it based on whether I feel like I have grounds on which to validate or your request for reconsideration. And at this point, like Councilman Bray said, staff and all of the outside entities that would have a concern don't have a concern levied, so I have no grounds on which to uphold your request at this point.
Council, anyone else?
Can we say anything at all? Because it was precisely because of presentations by staff members at the preliminary plat hearing that made us spend $400 on this. Because we know that some of this is not true. For example, we never had deer when we first moved up there. It's only now, and there were more deer killed on the road this year than I've seen in a long time. Another thing is, there's people who live in this subdivision already feel older people as well as younger people have no way to access, when their bikes. They have no place to go for recreation, safe recreation. There is nothing past Alvin Ricken Road, and I've walked that since the preliminary plat hearing, and I can't believe how bad it is. I mean, because we drive it every day, or not every day, but when we do. But the other thing is that traffic, excuse me, but the traffic count was done during spring break. We noticed this, all of us, people who are concerned about this. Now, those are the kinds of things I can't sit here quietly and not mention.
Okay, thank you. Now, I've let you say more than I should have. Okay. And it's because I like the two of you. But I've let you say more than you should have. This is in front of the council to do that. Thank you very much. Thank you.
When did you do your count, Marilyn?
The counts are taken off of stuff that's already been done prior to over different times. This is an analysis out of the Engineering Institute for Traffic. These are where I've got my counts from, based on residential homes with garages, so forth, and that there with this density out of the Institute. It's a National Institute manual that I've calculated. So the same numbers would be today, whether it was spring break or Christmas or any day. That's the formula that we recommend. Again, an institutional, or the standard that's a national standard, and then with the counts that's currently already there, that was done not during spring break.
Okay, thank you.
That's it. Well, I mean. Yeah, I mean, the recreation, there are lots of places in town where if we had bike lanes, I would love sidewalks on Johnny Creek Road so you don't break your ankle every time you try to, but we don't have that. It's not part of our ordinances that we retrofit bike lanes, and so I don't know that we, again, I understand it, I get it, but if we're going to say we have to do those things here, then we need to do them all over town, and there just isn't that kind of money.
Councilman Bray?
I was going to make a motion. Can we make a motion?
Go ahead. Let's just
Can we?
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime you would like to.
I move that we, I don't know what the correct wording, that we deny the reconsideration request?
That's fine, yeah.
Okay, I move, based on the data that we've received and the information from outside entities, that we deny the reconsideration request due to a lack of grounds.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Ortega, seconded by Cheatham. Wendy, could you please call the roll?
Ortega?
Yes.
Cheatham?
Yes.
Adamson?
Yes.
Gray?
Yes.
Lorick?
Yes.
Stevens?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We'll move then to agenda item number 8 is the final plat approval, South Point Vistas. Council may wish to approve a final plat application submitted by Scott Briscoe, represented by HLE Incorporated, to subdivide 30.48 acres, more or less, into 32 lots. The proposed subdivision is located south of and adjacent to Barton Road, near the intersection of Barton and American Road. Staff finds the proposal compliant with all applicable standards with conditions. Council?
Can we make a motion?
Yeah.
Go for it.
Yes.
I move to approve the request with the conditions noted.
Second.
We have a motion by Council President Adamson and a second by Ortega. Wendy, could you please call the roll?
Adamson?
Yes.
Ortega?
Yes.
Gray?
Yes.
Cheatham?
Yes.
Lorick?
Yes.
Stevens?
Yes.
Thank you. Agenda item 9, final plat approval, High Terrace Division 1. Council may wish to approve a final plat application submitted by B Street Investments, represented by Rocky Mountain Engineering and Surveying, to subdivide 7.68 acres, more or less, into 27 lots. The proposed subdivision is located northeast of the intersection of Sienna Drive and Vista Drive. Staff finds the proposal compliant with all applicable standards with conditions. Councilman Cheatham.
Mr. Mayor, I move for approval of agenda item number 9, the final plat approval for the High Terrace Division 1 with all applicable standards and conditions as specified.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Cheatham and seconded by Stevens. Wendy, could you please call the roll?
Cheatham?
Yes.
Stevens?
Yes.
Adamson?
Yes.
Gray?
Yes.
Lurick? Yes. Ortega?
Yes.
Thank you. Agenda item number 10, short plat approval, High Terrace Division 2. Council may wish to approve a short plat application submitted by B Street Investments, represented by Rocky Mountain Engineering and Surveying, to subdivide 1.41 acres, more or less, into 4 lots. The proposed subdivision is located northeast of the end of Vista Drive and adjacent to the southern portion of High Terrace Division 1. Staff finds the proposal compliant with all applicable standards with conditions. Councilman Bray?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the short plat approval for the High Terrace Division 2, subject to all the things being compliant with applicable standards and conditions.
Second.
We have a motion by Bray and a second by Cheatham. Wendy, could you please call the roll?
Gray?
Yes.
Cheatham?
Yes.
Adamson?
Yes.
Lurick? Yes. Ortega?
Yes.
Stevens?
Yes.
Thank you. Thanks for being with us tonight. You had nothing else to do, I'm sure, with that?
First time ever.
Agenda item 11, professional services agreement for Centennial Park Design Project. Council may wish to approve a professional services agreement and authorize the mayor's signature on all applicable documents between the City of Pocatello and Harmony Design and Engineering for the Centennial Park project, subject to legal department review. Under this agreement, Harmony will perform services related to the design development phase of the project. This agreement includes 60% preliminary design for the levee setback technical 408 permit, FEMA Clomar submittal, and wetland and stream altercation permit for the contract amount of $275,000. Funds are available in the Science and Environment Department budget. Councilman Bray.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the professional services agreement for the Centennial Park Design Project as outlined in agenda item number 11.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Bray and a second by Lurick.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
before we call on that, could I ask Maggie a question about this?
Sure, Maggie, come on up.
I'm just wondering where we stand on the timetable for this project. When you expect this will be completed and when construction might be anticipated to begin?
Mr. Mayor and members of the council, Maggie Clark, Public Works Project Manager. As far as the design completion, we anticipate that that can be done by this fall to this step 3. And then for task 4 and 5, we are dependent on funding that we do not currently have. And so I'm not sure about a time frame. It would just be dependent on that funding and fundraising. And as far as construction, we're hoping that once we have a design completed, then we will be able to apply for more grants and different funding opportunities will be opened up because we have a design. There's a lot more, I guess, opportunities for funding for construction. People want to see their dollars being put to actual use. That's not a very good way to say it. Tangible things that they can see happening. And so we would hope that we could get funding for the construction project more readily than the design.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Bray and a second by Councilmember Lurick. Wendy, could you please call the roll?
Gray?
Yes.
Lurick?
Yes.
Adamson?
Yes.
Cheatham?
Yes.
Ortega?
Yes.
Stevens?
Yes.
Thank you. Agenda item 12, Firehouse Subs Foundation Grant Application, Police Department. Council may wish to authorize submission of a Firehouse Subs Public Safety Foundation grant in the amount of $20,137 This grant will be used to purchase 102 custom MyFac first aid kits to be used by the police department. Each kit contains 46 pieces of life-saving medical equipment, and the kits will be easily worn by officers for immediate access. There is no required match. Councilmember Lurick?
I move that we approve agenda item number 12 and authorize submission of the Firehouse Subs Public Safety Foundation grant as outlined in that item. That's it.
Second. We have a motion by Lurick and a second by Cheatham. Wendy, could you please call the roll?
Lurick?
Yes.
Cheatham?
Yes.
Adamson?
Yes.
Bray?
Yes.
Ortega?
Yes.
Stevens?
Yes.
Thank you. Agenda item 13, memorandum of agreement with school district number 25 for school resource officer, police department. Council may wish to approve an updated memorandum of agreement with Pocatello School District number 25 to fund the current school resource officer SRO program. School district number 25 has agreed to provide an additional $91,512.64 to help fund costs for wages and benefits to the current SRO officers. Councilman Bray.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the memorandum of agreement with school district number 25 for school resource officers concurrent with our police department.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Bray and a second by Lurick.
Wait,
Yes.
you want to make a comment?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, all right. I just want to thank Chief Shy because this was something that I had a concern about getting more buy-in during the last budget round. And I just want to thank you, Chief, for taking it upon yourself to have the conversations necessary to make this happen. I appreciate that.
Super. Thank you. With that, we have a motion by Bray and a second by Lurick. Wendy, could you please call the roll?
Bray?
Yes.
Lurick?
Yes.
Adamson?
Yes.
Cheatham?
Yes.
Ortega?
Yes.
Stevens?
Yes.
Thank you. Agenda item 14, memorandum of understanding with Public Safety Cadets, PSC, for Community Program, Police Department. Council may wish to approve a memorandum of understanding with Public Safety Cadets, PSC, for establishment of a public safety cadet program. The program provides mentorship to young adults by public safety professionals through service to their communities and provides knowledge, skills, and practical experience through education and training. The program focuses on building character, physical fitness, and respect for the law. Cost of the program is $20 per year for unit registration and $15 per mentor participating in the program. The police department anticipates 6 or 7 officers to be involved as mentors each year. Cadets participating in fees in the amount of $15 per participant will be paid for by participating cadets. The PSC program will be implemented in conjunction with the first responders course offered through the school district number 25. Councilman Ortega.
I move that we approve the MOU with Public Safety Cadets, PSC, for the community program in conjunction with our police department. As outlined in agenda item 14, sorry.
Thank you. We have a motion by Councilmember Ortega and a second by Cheatham.
Or Stevens.
Cheatham beat her out.
Oh, I didn't hear you, I'm sorry. I didn't hear you. I thought he was calling
I think
for
it was
Cheatham.
just louder, I think. I think he heard, I heard him over you.
That's what I thought was happening, because I didn't hear you at all. Okay.
Yeah, we got it. Anyway, Councilwoman Ortega made a motion. Councilmember Cheatham seconded that first. Wendy, would you please call the roll?
First.
That's right.
Could I just have?
Oh, hold on. Don't call the roll, please.
So, Chief Shine, what is the relative age group, I mean, of these kiddos or young people, young adults, roughly?
So I'm going to have Corporal Sean Peterson come up to answer any other questions that you may have. But correct me if I'm wrong, but the age range is 16 to 20.
And do you envision this perhaps as helping with recruitment?
100%.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, that's what. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. That was it.
Thanks, Chief Shy, for letting
I'll stay down here.
Officer Peterson there answer those questions. I'm here, I'm going to let him answer the questions. Yes, ma'am, that's exactly what we think. Okay, we have a motion by Ortega and a second by Cheatham.
The real Cheatham.
Yeah, the real Cheatham. Wendy, would you please call the roll now?
Ortega.
Yes.
Cheatham.
Yes.
Adamson.
Yes.
Bray.
Yes.
Lorick.
Yes.
Stevens.
Yes.
Thank you. Agenda item 15, grant application, Idaho Commission for Libraries, ICFL, Marshall Public Library. Council may wish to approve a grant application in the amount of $22,100 to the Idaho Commission for Libraries, ICFL, for the Libraries Keep Students Learning and Adults Earning American Rescue Plan Act grant. Funds will be used to respond directly to pandemic community needs. The Marshall Public Library is requesting a Sprinter van and mobile hotspot to better meet the outreach needs of the community. The outreach will ensure learning and growth outside the physical constraints of the library facility through programming and events. Council may also wish to authorize acceptance of the award and authorize the mayor's signature on all pertinent documents. There is no local match. Council, one of you two, one. Whoever speaks first.
I move that we approve the grant application to the Idaho Commission for Libraries as outlined in agenda item number 15, that we authorize acceptance if awarded and authorize the mayor's signature on all pertinent documents.
Second.
See, she was really quick for that second because she's afraid she's going to get beat out. We have a motion by Councilmember Lurick and a second by Adamson. Wendy, could you please call the roll?
Lorick.
Yes.
Adamson.
Yes.
Bray.
Yes.
Cheatham.
Yes.
Ortega.
Ortega?
Yes.
Stevens.
Yes.
It's been a long day.
I was looking at the temperature outside, it's still 92. I'm sorry, Wendy.
Ready to go for ice cream?
Oh, my goodness. Okay. Then we'll move to agenda item number 16.
I'm sure that was all on camera, too.
It was.
Awesome.
An ordinance vacating the public's interest in 754 feet of Woodlawn Street and granting conveyance of said property to the adjacent property owner, Royce Flamingo LLC. Said vacation was approved by City Council decision dated May 20, 2021, and all conditions contained therein have been met. Council, how do you wish this to be read? Councilmember Bray.
Mr. Mayor, I move that ordinance agenda item number 16 be read only by title and placed on final passage for publication, and that only the ordinance summary sheet be submitted for publication.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Bray and a second by Cheatham. Wendy, could you please call the roll?
Bray.
Yes.
Cheatham.
Yes.
Adamson.
Yes.
Lorick.
Yes.
Ortega.
Yes.
Stevens.
Yes.
Thank you. Jared, could you please read the ordinance?
Yes, Mayor. An ordinance of the City of Pocatello and Municipal Corporation of Idaho abandoning and vacating the public's interest of approximately 754 feet of Woodlawn Street, more particularly described on the attached Exhibit A, providing that the public right-of-way herein vacated shall be distributed in its entirety to the adjoining property owner, Royce Flamingo LLC, in accordance with Idaho Code Sections 50-311 and 50-1306A, as deemed to be in the best interests of the owner of the vacated property and for the public good, providing that this ordinance shall be in full force and effect from and after its passage, approval, and publication according to law.
I declare that to be the final reading of the ordinance. Shall the ordinance pass?
Adamson.
Yes.
Bray.
Yes.
Cheatham.
Yes.
Lorick.
Yes.
Ortega.
Yes.
Stevens.
Yes.
Thank you. Agenda item 17, items from the audience. This time has been set aside to hear items from the audience. Not listed on the agenda, items which appear somewhere else on the agenda will not be discussed at this time. The council is not allowed to take any official action at this meeting on matters brought forward under this agenda item. Items will either be referred to the appropriate staff or scheduled on a subsequent agenda. You must sign in at the start of the meeting in order to be recognized. And we have one that signed in, Nikki Taysom.
She's not here.
Okay, then, thank you very much. With that, we'll move to agenda item 18, and we are adjourned. I don't know why I was going.